What's going on, guys? SMH Super Mario Hoops back with some more hoops. Today we're bringing you part 5 of our 10-part series of 100 teams we need in NBA 2K20. So I know the last few lists have been, kind of weird. There's been a lot of really old teams, but I promise you, if you're more of a recent type of guy, a younger fan, I guarantee you'll like this video a lot, because many of the teams on here are with at least since 2000. I'll say that, not to give it away, but yeah, if you enjoyed the series, be sure to keep following along, because we're only about halfway done. And yeah, part 5, let's get going. So at number 60, we got the 2012-2013 Milwaukee Bucks. This team was very interesting with their dynamic backcourt. They had Brandon Jennings at the point guard spot, and then also Monte Ellis at the shooting guard. Both were really good scorers. And they also had Larry Sanders, who at this time was one of the best shot blockers in the league. Ersan Ilyasova, a solid stretch big who's still playing today. They also had JJ Redick, who's one of the best shooters even in today's game as well. And then Luke Mbamute, who's a solid 3-and-D guy. And then if you look at this team, they were the 8th seed, 38-44 record. Not really the greatest, and they did end up getting swept by the Miami Heat. But I feel like a team with Jennings, Ellis, and even some shooters like Ilyasova and JJ Redick, and also Larry Sanders' down low presence, really makes this an interesting team for 2K. At 59, we got the 2014-2015 Portland Trailblazers. This team at the time had a very young, but still an all-star, Damian Lillard at their point guard spot. Wesley Matthews is a nice 3-and-D shooting guard who actually got injured, unfortunately, right before the playoffs. Nicholas Batum was really a jack-of-all-trades type of guy. And then you got LaMarcus Aldridge, who was a perennial all-star for this Trailblazers squad. You also got Robin Lopez, who provided a nice inside presence. And then Aaron Aflalo was good for about 10 points per game off the bench. A 51-31 record for this team got them the 4 seed, but they did lose in the first round, 4-1. Most of that was also because of Wesley Matthews' injury, which is unfortunate, but this team was pretty nice. At 58, we got the 2011-2012 Philadelphia 76ers. This team was pretty balanced. They had Andre Iguodala, who was actually a first-time All-Star, surprisingly, on this team, along with Drew Holiday, who would eventually become an All-Star the next season. They also had Thaddeus Young, who was a quality starting power forward. Elton Brand was still a very serviceable big man. Lou Williams off the bench, we already know how good that is. And then they had a young Evan Turner at shooting guard as well. This team was 35-31 on the regular season, which was good enough for the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference, where they eventually lost in 7 in the second round to the Boston Celtics. So I think with that much success for an 8th seed, I got to put them on the list. Why NBA gods? Why? At 57 is the Washington Wizards from 2016-2017. Now, I know what I said last video about not wanting to put teams that are not really close to much of a breakup, but 2 things. 1, this breakup is basically inevitable. It's going to happen. And 2, we haven't hardly seen this team play in so long because of John Wall's injuries. But this team did have John Wall when he was healthy, who was an All-NBA caliber player, arguably the second best player in the Eastern Conference. They also had Bradley Beal, who was an all-star caliber shooting guard. He wasn't officially an all-star yet, but we all know he was playing like an all-star shooting guard. They also had Otto Porter at small forward, who, outside of this season, this little half season with the Bulls, that was probably the best he's played in his career so far. Markieff Morris was not too bad at the power forward position. And then Marcin Gortat was a double-double guy at center. Looking at the bench, they had some quality bench players. Bojan Bogdanovic could really stretch the floor. They also had Kelly Oubre, who was a nice young piece for them. And then Brandon Jennings was a nice facilitator for them as well. The record was 49-33 on the season. That was good enough for the 4 seed in the Eastern Conference, where they got to the second round and lost in 7. Very close to the Eastern Conference Finals. But yeah, this is the most successful John Wall, Bradley Beal team, and it really looks like that's going to be the case going forward. The 56th spot goes to the Toronto Raptors from 2015-2016. This team was led by their leading scorer, DeMar DeRozan, who is obviously now gone to the Spurs, Kyle Lowry, who is still there, but he was a solid point guard and still is. Jonas Valanciunas was really starting to take the next step. They also had some other role guys like DeMarre Carroll, wasn't too bad. They also had Louis Scola at power forward. And then kind of like Jonas Valanciunas improving, the playoffs is really where Bismack Biyombo really took like big strides and got a huge contract as a result. This team was 56-26 in the regular season, which got them the second seed in the Eastern Conference. Unfortunately, they fell too short in the Eastern Conference Finals where they lost in 6 to the Cavaliers. But a DeRozan-Lowry pairing in Toronto would really be fitting. So at 55, we got the 2015-2016 Miami Heat. This team was loaded with veterans who were still very capable of playing. Obviously, Dwayne Wade was still an all-star at this point, as was Chris Bosh until he had, the blood clots issues. And then they also had Luol Deng, who was a very solid small forward, actually played really well in the playoffs. And then they also had Hassan Whiteside, who was really starting to make big improvements in his game. Goran Dragic was the starting point guard for this squad. And then their bench really had a lot of experience with Joe Johnson. And then they also had Amari Stoudemire. And then to round it out, you also got Gerald Green. This team was 48-34 in the regular season, good enough for the third seed in the East. And they ended up losing to actually the last team we just mentioned, the Toronto Raptors. They lost in 7 in the second round to them. But yeah, this team was just very interesting with all the veterans all put together. And they were still relatively successful and definitely a contender, so I got to put them on here. At 54, we got the 2016-2017 Utah Jazz. This team kind of came out and shocked everyone after not making the playoffs the year before. Gordon Hayward made the All-Star team, was his first time he was ever an All-Star. And then Rudy Gobert was also pretty close to making the All-Star team and close to winning Defensive Player of the Year. George Hill at point guard was really having a breakout season. You also got Rodney Hood, who was really starting to take strides in the right direction. Boris Diaw at power forward. He's kind of like a jack-of-all-trades type of guy. Joe Johnson was very clutch in the playoffs, especially against the Clippers in Game 1. And then Joe Ingles, we obviously know him as a great three-point shooter for this Jazz team today, but he had a lesser role then, of course. 51-31 was the record. They got to the second round, eventually got swept by the Warriors, but still exceeded expectations drastically. So with that in mind, I think they deserve a spot in the top 100. At 53, we got the 1951-1952 Minneapolis Lakers. This team was led by George Mikan, who is a Hall of Fame big man, who is also in 2K. Then they had Vern Mickelson, who averaged about 15 and 10 at the power forward spot, as well as Jim Pollard as well at the small forward position. And then they had Slater Martin, who was kind of the main facilitator in this team. A 40-26 record, and they ended up winning the championship in 7 games. So I figured at least there had to be one team like with this type of core in 2K. And I mean, it kind of pays some respect to some of the older teams that don't really get much of a look nowadays. At 52, we got the 1954-1955 Syracuse Nationals. This team was led by their Hall of Fame power forward, Dolph Schayes. They also had Paul Seymour, who was a pretty good scoring guard. Red Racha was their elite big man down low. And then Earl Lloyd was a pretty good small forward, also the first African-American basketball player to play in the NBA. 43-29 was the record on the season, and they ended up winning the title just like the Lakers in 52. They won the title in 55. So I had to put at least one team with this type of core in here. At 51, we got the 1985-1986 Houston Rockets. This team had the twin towers of a young Hakeem Olajuwon and also Ralph Sampson, who was probably one of the best players robbed by injuries. They also had John Lucas, who in his prime was an all-star point guard. And then Rodney McRae, who's actually already in 2K and is not a bad player. Also, some other guys like Lewis Lloyd and then also Robert Reed were pretty good scoring guards. A 51-31 record, good enough for the second seed in the West, got them a trip to the NBA Finals where they eventually lost in 6. But I feel like this is probably the best team with the Twin Towers on it together. So I figured might as well put them on this list. So thank you guys for watching this video. If you did enjoy, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Now we are officially halfway through the series, so parts 6 through 10 will be coming up very soon. But make sure to let me know in the comments what you think of the teams I've listed so far at the halfway point. Also, if you want, please follow me on my social media pages connected to my YouTube channel. I have an Instagram and a Twitter. They'll both be on the screen. And yeah, I think that's just about it. So I'm out of here. Peace.